When my father ordered security to throw me out of the family gala, he didn't even look at me, not once. His voice echoed across the marble hall, sharp enough to slice through every memory I had of being his daughter. "Get her out! She doesn't belong here." People turned. Phones came up. My mother hid behind her champagne glass. I stood there, frozen, humiliated, small, and utterly invisible to the people whose blood ran in my veins. And when he shouted, "Then bring me the owner," no one expected me to answer. "My name is Clarissa Pennington," and that night, the family who erased me demanded to speak to the owner. They just didn't know the owner was me. 10 years away, and the air still smells like grapes and judgment. The moment the estate came into view, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the kind that comes when you're heading somewhere you swore you'd never return to. The brass plaque at the entrance read, "Pennington Estate, invitation only." It gleamed in the last light of the afternoon, as if mocking me. I slowed to a stop beside the gate, rolled down my window, and waited. The guard checked his clipboard, his tone polite but rehearsed. "I'm sorry, Ms. Pennington isn't listed as a guest tonight." For a second, I thought I misheard him. Then I caught the hesitation in his eyes, the kind reserved for people who almost belong. "Try under disappointment," I said flatly. "That's how my family usually files me." He froze, fumbling with his earpiece. After a brief call, his voice lowered. "Your mother said, if you insist, you may enter, but you're not to sit with them." "If I insist," as if I were begging for scraps of permission. The gate creaked open. Wind brushed through the rows of vines like a whisper of old memories, the leaves trembling as though they recognized me. I remembered my grandmother, Edith, showing me how to tie the vines so they wouldn't break under their own weight. "True wine doesn't try to impress," she used to say. "It just takes time." The drive up felt longer than it used to. The house rose like a monument to everything I'd left behind: stone, glass, and pride. Inside, chandeliers spilled gold light over crystal tables, violins played, and every guest sparkled with curated importance. My brother stood at the stage, voice rich with practiced charm. The Pennington legacy endures for those who carry it with pride. His words hit like a quiet slap. My mother looked past me without blinking, pretending I wasn't there. My father sat at the center table, immovable, his expression carved in marble beside his business partners. No one greeted me. No one offered a chair. I found an empty seat near the back, where the shadows met the sound of laughter. A glass of red wine waited at my place, made from grapes I'd once helped choose. I swirled it slowly, watching the reflection of the chandelier shatter across its surface. "They built an empire from grapes and pride," I whispered to myself. "I built mine from silence." A waiter leaned close, voice barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Pennington asked me to remind you not to stay too long." I smiled, though it hurt. "Don't worry," I said. "I never do." The violin swelled again, sweet and hollow. I lifted the glass to my lips, the taste sharp, familiar, and cold. Just like home. The ballroom noise faded as I stepped into the evening air. The vines shimmered gold under the fading sun, the breeze carrying that same scent of ripened grapes and memory. Back then, no one asked for invitations. You were family, and that was enough. A calm voice broke the quiet. "Didn't expect to see Haven Grove's founder here." I turned. Harold Brenner, steady, polished, familiar. "Let's keep that between us," I said. "My family prefers simpler titles." He smiled. "Then they'll be shocked when they learn your fund just acquired this place." I froze. "Acquired what?" "Pennington Estate," he said. "The trustees sold controlling shares to Haven Grove last week." The words hit like a slap. For years they said I ruined the family name. And now, that name legally belonged to me. I nearly dropped my glass. The wind rustled through the vines, shaking down a few ripe grapes, an ending disguised as harvest. Harold said softly, "You should tell your story. Reinvention isn't betrayal." "They wouldn't see it that way," I murmured, staring back at the glowing ballroom. The glass in my hand caught its reflection. Funny how the things you save never thank you for saving them. Back inside, laughter swelled. My mother's voice cut through it. "Clarissa, I almost didn't recognize you. That dress? Linen?" "Yes." "Sustainable? That explains a lot." Polite laughter rippled. Lucas raised his glass. "To 100 years of legacy, and to those who never left." Applause. I smiled faintly. Sometimes leaving is the only way to protect what's left. Across the room, Grandma Edith met my eyes. She nodded once, slow, deliberate. She knew. She'd always known. My mother's tone turned sharp. "Not everyone understands what legacy means. Some prefer chasing trends." I set my glass down. "Maybe legacy is just a word people use to hide from change." The room went still. I turned and walked toward the doors, the chandeliers glinting behind me. If they want to toast to legacy, I thought, they'll soon learn who really owns it. By 9, the music blurred into noise. I stood near the bar, listening to the hollow chatter that filled the room. A waiter leaned close. "Ms. Pennington, your mother asked that you not speak to the guests." I smiled. "Of course. Wouldn't want to ruin anyone's appetite." Across the floor, Lucas's voice cut through laughter. "She left for some startup nonsense. Now she's, what, a consultant?" "Not anymore," I said, stepping in. He stiffened. "Clarissa, this is a family event." I must have missed that memo when I wasn't invited. My mother appeared, voice smooth but cold. "You could have worn something appropriate. People are asking who invited you." "You did." "That was a courtesy, not an open invitation." "Courtesy seems in short supply tonight." The laughter faded, just as my father's voice roared across the hall. "Clarissa, what are you doing here, dressed like a tourist? Celebrating the family legacy? You left this family, have you no shame?" "Not as much as you'd like me to." Guests turned, cameras rose. He waved for security. "Get her out, she's not welcome here." "This is how you treat family?" "Family? You forfeited that title years ago." I held his stare. "Then perhaps this isn't your decision to make." "If the manager has a problem," he shouted, "bring me the owner." For years, they decided who belonged. Tonight, they demanded the owner, and they were about to get exactly what they asked for. The hall fell silent. Evelyn, the event manager, stepped forward. "Mr. Pennington, are you sure you want to speak to the owner?" "Yes, whoever they are." She turned toward me. "Mr. Pennington, you already have." The room froze. Lucas dropped his glass. My mother gasped. "That's impossible," my father stammered. "It's not," I said, opening my folder. "The trustees transferred ownership last week. Your debts, paid by me." He paled. "You did this to humiliate us." "No, to save us." My grandmother's voice cut through the whispers. I knew. I wanted to see if the vineyard would recognize its true roots again. I looked around the room. "You asked to speak to the owner. I'm right here. I've been here all along. You just never saw me." That night, I didn't win. I simply stopped losing. The celebration ended in chaos. By the time I reached the winery office, headlines were already spreading. Pennington heiress exposes family power shift. 1 hour later, my father called an emergency meeting. The long oak table gleamed under dim yellow light. Stacks of documents spread like evidence. My mother trembled beside him. Lucas sat silent. Eyes on the floor. I stood where my father once ruled. "You humiliated us," he hissed. "No," I said. "You humiliated yourselves by pretending the debts didn't exist." He slammed the table. "You bought our name behind our backs." "I saved it. You were weeks from bankruptcy." Beatrice's voice cracked. You could have told us. Would you have listened? You stopped hearing me long before I left. I opened my leather folder. Here's the bank notice. The auction date was set. Haven Grove intervened, paid every cent. Lucas's face drained of color. That can't be right. I handled the accounts. Did you? Or did you just sign what they gave you? He snatched the addendum. His own signature stared back. That was supposed to be temporary. Contracts don't care about intentions. My father sank into his chair. You planned this? No. I planned to build something sustainable. You just refused to evolve. The door opened. My grandmother entered, her voice steady. Enough. Mother, she saved you, Edith cut in. I let her act because I wanted to see if the Pennington name still meant integrity. My mother gasped. You knew? Yes, she said softly. And I watched you forget what family used to mean. My father's anger dissolved into exhaustion. You wanted to make me small. No, Dad. I wanted you to see that small doesn't mean weak. I rebuilt what you lost, but you're too proud to see it. I slid the documents toward him. You can stay on the board, but not as chairman. They wore crowns made of paper and called it legacy. I only wanted to keep it from burning. Morning came quiet and gray. The vineyard shimmered under thin fog as I sat in the old office once belonging to my grandfather. The only sound was the clock ticking. Evelyn knocked softly and handed me a sealed envelope. Mrs. Edith asked me to give you this. She said it's for after. The wax seal cracked easily. Inside, her handwriting flowed in confident lines. My dear girl, I always knew you were the only one who saw the vineyard for what it was. Not a business, but a living thing. I let them believe they owned it because power blinds faster than poverty. When you left, I feared you'd never return. But you did. Not to claim what's yours, but to remind us what we forgot. You don't owe them revenge. Clarissa, you owe yourself peace. Edith Pennington. I folded the letter, tears burning my eyes. I remembered her teaching me to turn spoiled grapes into vinegar. When I'd asked why she didn't throw them away, she'd smiled. Because even spoiled grapes can teach you patience. Now I understood. She'd been teaching me how to turn pain into strength all along. I stepped outside, sunlight breaking through the fog, and ran my fingers along the vines. I don't need to destroy them, I whispered. I just need to rebuild us differently. The glass fermenter near the door caught the morning light, red wine glowing inside like fire finally at rest. I'd spent 10 years trying to prove I wasn't what they said. But peace doesn't come from being right. It comes from letting go. By morning, the headlines had spread faster than wildfire. Disowned daughter buys back family winery. Pennington legacy saved by the one they rejected. My phone vibrated endlessly. Reporters, emails, invitations, accusations. Some praised me as a visionary. Others called me a traitor. One headline stung most. She humiliated her family for fame. Then came my father's statement, printed in bold. My daughter betrayed her bloodline for profit. I read it twice, then closed the paper. I didn't feel anger, just exhaustion, the kind that seeps into your bones when the truth no longer surprises you. At Haven Grove's office, my communications team crowded around a glowing screen filled with articles. Harold Brenner's name flashed on my phone. Clarissa, he said, his voice calm but firm. They're twisting the story. If you stay silent, they'll own the narrative again. He was right. Silence had protected me once, but now it would destroy everything I'd built. So I agreed. A press conference, at the vineyard, under the same sky that had watched my family fall apart. The day came gray and heavy with wind. Cameras lined the courtyard, flashes slicing through the air. I stepped to the podium, the logo Pennington Estate gleaming behind me. This vineyard has stood for 100 years, I began. But legacy isn't about bloodlines or surnames. It's about integrity, and integrity means facing the truth. even when it hurts. I didn't take this estate from my family. I took it back from debt, denial, and pride. The crowd fell silent. Someone called out, "Do you forgive them?" I looked toward the vines swaying in the distance. "I don't need to forgive them to move forward," I said softly. "But I hope someday they forgive themselves." The cameras clicked, but no one spoke. When it was over, I turned toward the old wooden house where my father still lived. The wind carried the scent of grapes and earth. Steady, patient, unjudging. "They built their world on silence," I whispered. "I built mine on truth. And now, truth will have the final word." A week later, I called the first official meeting of the Pennington Council. The oak doors shut behind me with a heavy click, sealing us in the room that had witnessed every decision this family ever made. The long table gleamed under the low light, and the portraits of our ancestors stared down from the walls, stern, watchful, and silent. I took the seat at the head, the one my father had occupied for decades. Across from me sat Henry, his posture rigid but his eyes dull with fatigue. My mother, Beatrice, kept her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Lucas stared at the grain of the table as if it might open and swallow him whole. No one spoke. "This isn't about revenge," I began, my voice steady. "It's about responsibility." I slid the latest reports across the table. "The vineyard is debt-free, profitable again, but we can't rebuild it with the same arrogance that nearly destroyed it. It needs new leadership values, transparency, humility, accountability." My father's jaw clenched. I met his gaze. "Henry Pennington, effective immediately. You're relieved of your duties as chairman. You may remain as honorary advisor." He leaned forward, voice trembling with anger. "You can't." "I can," I said quietly. "But I won't take your dignity, just your title." He sat back, staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. I turned to my mother. "Beatrice, you'll remain as the public ambassador, but every statement goes through review first. No more embellishments for the society pages." Her eyes filled, but she nodded. "All right," she whispered. Then Lucas looked up, voice small. "And me?" "You stay," I told him, "but you'll start by earning back the trust you lost, with the employees you dismissed." A murmur rippled down the table. Then a man stood, one of the senior vineyard managers, his hands rough and stained with years of work. "Ms. Pennington," he said, voice trembling, "there's something you should know. During the debt crisis, Mr. Lucas made us sign resignation letters in advance. We were too scared to speak." Lucas closed his eyes. My father's shoulders sagged. I nodded once. "Thank you for your honesty," I said gently. "You've carried the truth longer than you should have." I looked at Lucas. "This isn't punishment. It's a reckoning. Every lie we hide here grows mold, just like a forgotten barrel of wine." The silence that followed was heavy but clean, the kind that feels like air after a storm. "From today," I said, rising, "every member of this family serves the vineyard, not owns it. If we can't lead with humility, we don't deserve to lead at all." No one objected. My father nodded faintly, his defiance finally gone, replaced by something quieter, maybe acceptance, maybe shame. I gathered the papers, closing my folder. "We'll host the Autumn Festival next month," I said. "Together, as equals." As I walked toward the door, the sound of chairs shifting behind me felt different this time. Not resistance, but release. For years, they made the rules and called it love. Today, I made the rules and called it mercy. A year later, the vineyard breathed differently. The autumn air was softer, filled with laughter instead of whispers, and the scent of ripe grapes carried warmth instead of weight. The autumn harvest gala had returned, larger, brighter, but lighter somehow, as though the land itself had learned to forgive. Music floated over the courtyard, violins blending with the rustle of wind through the vines. Long tables stretched across the terrace, covered in linen the color of cream and gold. I sat at the head table this time, the brass nameplate before me, engraved simply, "The owner's table." Beside me, my grandmother smiled, her thin hand trembling slightly as she adjusted her glass. "It feels different this year," she whispered. "It should," I said. "We earned this peace." For the first time in years, my family sat beside me by choice, not obligation. Lucas spoke quietly with the vineyard staff he once ignored. My mother laughed with the guests instead of posing for them. And my father, older, humbler, sat in silence until he finally rose to his feet, his glass catching the sunlight. He cleared his throat. "To Clarissa," he said, voice rough but sincere, "who saved us when we didn't deserve saving." A ripple of applause swept through the courtyard. Glasses lifted. I raised mine, meeting his eyes with a calm that came from somewhere deeper than pride. "To truth," I said softly, "and to peace." We drank. The wine glowed ruby red under the sunlight, reflections scattering across the table like tiny fires. I caught one glint dancing over my hand, the same hand that had once been pointed at in shame. The light lingered, steady and kind, and as I looked across the vineyard, golden rose stretching into the horizon, I realized the symmetry of it all, how the story had come full circle. Once, they erased my name from their world. Now, they sat at my table, listening. Once, they demanded to speak to the owner. Now, they finally listen. The music swelled, the vines shimmered beneath the sun, and for the first time, everything, the family, the land, the legacy, felt whole again.